Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Detzel. This podcast starts now.
All right, welcome to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel and
I'm Nicole Saunders.
Nicole, how have you been?
I've been good. It's been a little while. It's been busy, but all exciting stuff keeping me busy. So that's good.
I know it's been extremely busy for me now. You know, I own this online community thing. I own our big event that we're going to have in October. I own our executive council and on and on and on, you know, but we don't want to talk about all of that today. But one of the topics that came up and something that's changed in a big way since you and I have spoken last. I think we spoke back in October when we did a Peers Over the Beers with all the women in tech. So that's been a long time.
Yes.
Everything's changed from AI stuff, Chat GPT, Bard, and some other really cool things, you know?
Yeah. The technology world has just exploded around us, hasn't it?
It's crazy. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about, how does that affect our jobs? How does that affect the community world? Maybe even some of the vendors and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's an interesting one because I think what I've been hearing a lot about is sort of how it's going to impact customer support, right? That we're going to see a lot more bots and things like that. And so one of the first things that I started thinking about was like, on the one hand, this could be good for communities because it's going to mean that, like, boy, if we're having all these bot interactions over here, the value of human engagement is going to be so much more important. And so providing those spaces where you're like, hey, there's real people you can talk to here is a cool one. On the other hand, that may deflect a lot of people away from communities. And, you know, I particularly tend to think about a lot of like brand communities and support communities. And if you've got all this AI in front of that, how are people getting to your community and what is the unique value proposition? How do we need to pivot that to still create a valuable space and a unique offering when you do have bots answering a lot of like the low-hanging fruit questions and that kind of thing? Or maybe even some more of the complex questions, you know, they're getting pretty advanced.
You know, I think of it as, and I've kind of thought about some of the same things. And one of the big things was, you know, I was reading all about Chat GPT and they have these open APIs where these product companies and other companies can really start using those things, meaning, you know, and the way I kind of vision this was in the past, I thought kind of the holy grail of an online community is building your online community, like the platform, whether you have, you know, Zendesk or, you know, HireLogic, I don't know, whatever, and building it right into your platform, right? And it just kind of seamlessly helps answer questions, you know, it's kind of already there. It finds those questions related to some of those, or those answers related to some of those questions. Now, I think, do you really need a platform to where you can, or build, a product company could build like a Chat GPT that is trained on all of the information given about that product. So it can read your documentation, it can read everything about the product, it could learn those things, and then instantly give you an answer about the product. It can give you the code, it can give you whatever the hell you need to have that answer to that question. And so when you think of those, that's what I was thinking about whenever I thought, you know, do support communities, you know, if somebody gets smart, they could just build their own Chat GPT within their own product, and it's wham, it's easy, you know?
It's true. I think the first question that comes to mind is like, how frequently are you going to train them and add information, right? Like one of the limitations I've heard a lot with like Chat GPT, for example, is, it's only been trained on data going back to 2021 or something like that. And we're hearing a news story that was saying like Chat GPT didn't know that Elon Musk owned Twitter now. And so we were asking a bunch of questions about Twitter and it was answering and it was wrong because it wasn't trained on the right data set. Right. So on the one hand, you know, your community, that knowledge is always pretty current because it's what people know today. Of course, we all have those outdated posts, but then you can update them. And so, you know, that's one piece of it. But I do think it may change the nature of communities, right? I think there's always going to be, people are always going to want a space where they can pick each other's brains, where they get multiple perspectives and things like that. but it may start to be more, actually, interestingly, more about the conversations and less about the Q&A. Right?
I agree with you. And I think that changes some of the dynamics of what an online community is. And it moves those conversations from more those technical questions to where this is just me saying potentially, right? I believe
neither of us knows for sure, right?
Because, Rich Mullington has done research in the past and said, hey, look, most of these people that want answers to the questions aren't coming back unless they need more answers to the questions. They're not necessarily there to connect to people, especially if all the programs that you have are just online programs, right? So if all you have is a Q&A, it's all I want is the answer. Now, if you have programs that are connecting people to see how they're doing certain things, or even if it's more of a thought leadership type stuff. So instead of always talking about how to do this bits and bytes within this product, doing this, maybe you're thinking about the higher level type conversations like, data quality, or, for us, instead of master data management, it would be like data quality at a higher level, or data governance at a higher level, or, entity resolution at a higher level, those things, and what that means. And you can authenticate, you can have those conversations rather than, well, how do you, connect this API to that API, and then, what does it do? What's the code? I don't know. I think that's what that levels up, and it helps, and it pushes community leaders to think a little bit differently,
Well, and I think there's two components to all of this sort of like preparing for all of this stuff to come, to market fairly quickly. One is, what do we need to prepare ourselves for as community managers and community professionals, right? And so the first piece that you and I have been talking about here is how we position our communities and what the value proposition of it is, and how we still create a great place for people to come to if a lot of the content that currently exists there is now more easily answered by generative AI.
Yeah.
And then the other is the role of community platforms and what kind of technological changes are we going to need to make? I feel like community platform development has been kind of stagnant for a long time. We kind of we figured out forums, we figured out gamification, we figured out connecting to things like LMS and CRM. And then there hasn't been a ton of new innovation in the space, in part because, well, it worked pretty well. But I think that this is going to be a really great opportunity for platforms to be innovative in terms of things like, I need new moderation tools. I need help identifying who might be a bot in my community. What if I suddenly get an influx of bot created spam? How am I going to manage that kind of thing? I think as community managers, we need to think about, do we need to change our rules of engagement and our code of conduct and say, here's when it's acceptable to use generated content and here's where it's not, or you have to have a disclaimer if you're posting generated content, or, because I think that there is a great space and opportunity for generated content in communities to be used. But part of the reason we go to communities is to connect with people. And so how do we handle that very blurred line between what's a human's response and what isn't?
I think that, I was reading something about discourse today and some of the stuff that they're implementing. And one of the things they said, and I thought was kind of cool, just a little tactical thing, is sometimes when you look at some of the titles that people come up with, it's like one word and you're like, that's not really explaining anything. So,
especially when the title is like question.
Yeah. Question here.
Password reset.
But what it does, one of the things that they do is they now have built a way that in their platform that you can just put in the content, the description, and it gives you suggestions for a title, right? Hey, use this title rather than, So, there's little things like that.
Hey, Chat GPT, write me an SEO.
No, but it already does it.
Title for this post, right?
Yeah.
You can just put in the body.
You can already do that.
You
can already do that, but it's already inside the title. It's
title embedded in there. That's really cool.
Like it just like a little Chat GPT embedded into your. I don't know. It's Chat GPT, but it's a large language models.
Right. One of those generative
whatever it is.
AIs, right?
But and it's just change. So to me, that's just one little thing. That and they mentioned several other things that they're doing. So there is one platform trying to already do some of those things. And you know why they can do it? Is because they're very API friendly, right? They can just do, they just could build these add-ons that allow them to do some cool shit. You know what I mean? You look at the Higher Logics or probably the Kuroses and things like that. They've been around for so long. They have so much to lose. I mean, they have so many things already built. And so to just easily kind of, connect something or connector or whatever is just a lot different. It's going to be a lot harder for them,
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think that's, it's true with a lot of different kind of legacy technologies. Absolutely. How do you keep it adaptable? And that's a whole product development rabbit hole I don't want to go down right now.
No, I'm saying,
but yeah, no, it's a really good point. I think it'll be really interesting too. I've been talking with a lot of other community managers and some companies are starting to do a lot of experimentation and ideation on like, how could these technologies get used in different spaces? And a lot of the community professionals I talk to are like, oh gosh, I don't know. Cause I think there's a big knee jerk for most of us of like, no, we deal with people. We don't want bots in our space. But I think there are some interesting opportunities, that's a great example of like, is there a way that it can make community content more friendly? I've thought about like, how could you potentially use it to ingest what's going on in a community, right? Like one of the hardest things about a community is when your executive team comes in and says, well, what are the common trends right now? Like, what are people talking about? And you're like, oh, I don't know. I got to like,
let me use ChatGPT and it tells me.
Right. And now you can like use some of these technologies to ingest all that information. I mean, and there's machine learning and like natural language processing that's been around for a long time that can do this. But I think now it's much more accessible to be able to say, hey, read every conversation in this and tell me what the most commonly used words are, or, help me highlight every place that this feature is mentioned. Or it's that ability to do some of that processing that used to require a human to sit down and read through all of it and synthesize it and decode it. And I think now it's going to be more about validating the output that those things have, because
that's right.
Let's not forget, we need that, right? Like these are still machines. They make errors. We've all heard about the hallucinations and incorrect answers. But so I do think it's where some of our responsibilities start to shift from maybe I'm not the person doing that synthesis so much as I'm the person validating the synthesis an AI is doing for me.
Yeah. And, I use in a way ChatGPT today for my work on community. So for example, I do a lot of what I call shows or webinars, right? Some of them are deep, some of them are high level and whatever, do a lot of those. And I want to talk about that one day, just to talk about influence revenue and things, but that's not today. But the beauty about some of these shows or webinars is that there's an attachment to YouTube, for example, and YouTube can spit out an entire, not transcript, it can, but a description of everything that you said. And you can write a specific blog post on what you just said, right? And so what I've been using it for, one is just more of a summary, right? To even, put into kind of because I'll push that show out on my community, as a post, and then just put a description in there, a title if I want, and things like that. And so, the beauty about, even though it's origination or original content, my bad. And, but I'm just doing it quickly. And then if I wanted to get a transcript, I can. Now I don't have to go to rev.com and pay $105 for, a transcript. Every single transcript I do for $500 or $600 a month for 4 or 5 of these webinars, I could just go to YouTube and transcribe it. And it's beautiful, or I can get a title, or I can get, really good content just from the original content I've already created. It just does it. You know what I mean? Like that's beautiful.
Pretty amazing. I can't say I've used it for anything at work yet. I've been tentative and really careful, but I do a lot of writing. And one of the hardest things would be about writing it oftentimes, especially if you're writing something with a specific prompt or assignment, is just getting started, right? It's so easy to be like, oh, I don't know where I want to start. I don't know where I want to go with it. And I find like some of that technology can be really good just for getting over the writer's block. Like, just give me that first draft, right? And this is how I've heard a lot of people talking about this is treat this AI like an intern or like a junior writer who can help you
Yeah.
get the initial ideas, the initial stuff together, and then get you on your way. And so in some ways, I think there's a great opportunity here for this to make us way more efficient, especially, as the leaders of communities.
Probably way more dumber. But yeah.
But
the critical thinking is going to be a little bit different. You know what I mean?
Totally. And that's why, again, it's get that first draft and then go from there.
Yeah.
But we publish a lot of content, don't we?
Yeah.
And
we do.
This is a great way to help you get that off the ground. Or I was thinking about, we launched our user groups back in November, right? Yeah. And now I have like dozens of meetups all over the world that I need to be promoting. And for a while there, I was like, okay, how do I write 27 different tweets that all say, come to our user group?
Yeah. Now you have it.
Well, now I don't have to. I can have a robot help me out with that and come up with some different nuances and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I do some writing and I push, I'll write a paragraph and I'm like, that sounds like crap. Can I just push that paragraph into ChatGPT and you clean it up for me a little bit? Yeah, it does. It's like, I'm like, holy cow, this is exactly what I wanted to say. And so I think there's going to be ways, and our people are already doing it, and I would say, for work, yeah, you have to be careful because you don't want to write, shitty stuff, or you got to be careful. But, I look at it as, this is already original content. How can they clean it up for me? And how to, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't have to, spend hours doing it or paying somebody now to do it. I can just get this done in like 20 minutes. You know what I mean? And it's clean it up a little bit. Maybe I spent 30 minutes on it. It's done. Content is a key, at the end of the day. And if I can get that done faster, and I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing, to be honest.
I mean, that's the thing is my hope is, we talk a lot about how community managers wear so many hats and we have so many tasks. And maybe this is a place where we can offload a little bit of that work so that we can focus on the strategy and we can focus on those meaningful moments of connection with our users, because we don't have to spend 3 hours drafting the announcement post for the latest thing or whatever, that takes up your time.
Descriptions and okay, so I'll talk to an expert and I'll say, hey, let's do a show, next month. And he goes, I said, just throw out a topic that you want. Just tell me what it's about and a quick blurb, right? I did this the other day on one of our executives. And he did that, and I threw it in a ChatGPT, and I was like, "Give me 5 titles." Boom, gives me 3. It gives me 5 titles, and I pick one, and then I pick a description. I was like, cleaned it up just a little, just took off, and I sent him. How about this? He goes, "Yeah, that's really good." I was like, "Okay, good. We'll use that." You know what I mean? Like, and it literally took me 5 minutes, So now he didn't have to spend 30 or 40 minutes or an hour kind of coming up with the topic or a great. Now I just did it for him. It's easy. Let's go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was beautiful. So I think, using that to get stuff done fast. Anyways, I don't know if I digress a little bit, but I'm very excited about this topic. And I think it's we haven't even touched any of it yet. Like we're just doing the basics.
I know. I mean? We're going to go listen to this podcast in 6 months and be like, oh, we were so
out of date.
So young then. We had no idea what we were getting into. But yeah, so it's interesting. Like we said, on the one hand, there's like, how is this going to impact traffic and utilization and really the role of especially support communities and online forums? How does that change things for us? What are the tools and the technology we're going to need to be able to manage communities as all of this comes online and infinite numbers of users start using and automating things and interactions? Something that just came to mind there is like, well, okay, so say you've got a community where you give your internet cookie points for responding to users, and somebody says, well, I want to be on the top of the leaderboard. I'm just going to use AI to answer all of these questions and post as me, and now I win. Like, we're going to have to figure out how to manage all of those things, and hopefully platforms will help us figure out, give us tools both to manage AI and generated content coming in, as well as to leverage it to help us be more efficient and serve our communities more effectively.
I think that's the risk here, right?
There's a lot of risk, right?
Yeah, and I think that, companies that are building these machine learning AI kind of tools, like a chat GPT or whatever, they're going to have to go through, hopefully at some point, very rigorous kind of rules and regulations and things like that, because, at the end of the day, like there's going to be a lot of false shit out there, and, we're going to have to deal with that, and so, you know, companies will be fined and will be, so it's a big risk for them, and so I think that although the genie is out of the bottle and everybody's going to go after it, and I love it, and I think it's really great, honestly, but I think there's a big risk and a big opportunity to kind of, put some rules and regulations and things like that for companies, so that it's not just throwing out a bunch of gibberish. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Because I've seen it wrong. Like, if you're not careful, like you said, I mean, if it's like Chat GPT, it's only, from my understanding, only knows everything, things from 2021 and before, and not the current events. I'm not saying won't learn and whatever, but it doesn't know that, Biden's going to go for president again. Maybe it can assume it, but it doesn't know that for sure. You know what I mean? So, we've got to be careful. Well,
and then there's that trick of like, but also a lot of that information, like it's wrong, but it sounds right.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And, I think about running a product support community, and, we do have some QA in place, because also end users can be wrong.
Yeah, of course.
And they can provide incorrect answers. But now it becomes even that much more important to make sure that the answers that sound right really are right. And it's not someone used Chat GPT to get themselves to the top of the leaderboard and put a whole bunch of wrong answers in your community that you got to go deal with now. So I hope that some of the platforms out there are thinking about some of these challenges and how we can manage them. And, it'll be interesting to see if this creates new kinds of roles in community too, right? In the last several years, we've seen it go from like the all hats community manager to like, oh, now there's ops specialists and there's event specialists, and there's content specialists and moderation. And now there's going to be like this new thing, I think, of like community, like AI specialists that are going to like really know this technology and have to figure out how to work with it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, look, I think, the role of kind of the community manager or leader probably changes in the next year or two, and to some degree. Like, do I think it's extreme? I don't know. I don't think so, but it could, and it'd be very interesting to watch. But that with roles leaving out of the industry, there's new roles that come in. We have to adapt and we have to figure it out. At the end of the day, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, technology is changing at a rapid speed and sometimes game changing like this. This is game changing, no doubt about it. And Absolutely. It's kind of like when social came about. You remember, like, I think it was, MySpace, and then Facebook, and then a bunch of other stuff, and it just changed the way we connected to people and talk to people. And it's the same. This is the same. This is going to do that, I think,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think this is like the next big evolution and things. And I love the example of social media, because like you point out, like, remember the early days of social media where we were all just like figuring out what it was. Yeah. And I kind of miss those days. Because it's evolved into something totally different now. It'll be interesting to see like what are the early days of AI and generative technologies, and then where does it go and what does it build to and what does it become in the long run. And I think the savviest community professionals are going to stay right on top of it. We need to be learning about this technology. We need to be thinking about both the challenges and the opportunities it provides us, because it's going to take over our spaces, and we need to be ready for it. We need to be thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, it's just a great conversation, Nicole. I really appreciate you getting on today.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so good to see you again, Chris. And I hope we can visit a little bit more frequently again.
I think we'll make that happen. So, well, thank you everyone for tuning in to another Peers Over Beers. Do not forget to rate and review us, which I forgot to say in every single episode in the past, but please rate and review us. I'm Chris Detzel, and
I'm Nicole Saunders.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.